Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I wanted to bring you a classic movie review. I've been doing some of these sporadically, but I've been trying to catch up on just classic films that I've never seen, ones that are regarded as cult classics or more broadly, just classics. So I finally got around to watching Eraserhead, the 1977 David Lynch debut, I believe, in terms of a feature-length film. And I had read and heard a lot about this movie. And prior to this, or prior to watching this, I would say, I wasn't the biggest David Lynch fan. I mean, some of the stuff I did watch and appreciate for its artistic merit. I mean, I remember being in college and watching Mulholland Drive, and I don't remember a ton about that. I am going to rewatch it soon as I'm trying to work through Lynch's catalog just to kind of educate myself on that and to see what all the sort of fuss is about with him as a filmmaker. So anyway, I picked up the Criterion Collection version of this, popped it in my player last night, and I sat down and watched it. And Eraserhead is not a long movie. I think it's an hour and a half, something along those lines. But it tells the story of Henry Spencer, I believe is the name of the character, played by Jack Nance, a guy who lives in this weird, kind of surreal, industrial, claustrophobic environment in a small little apartment in a very confined, kind of walled-off, architecturally bland area, working as a print manufacturer, a printer. He has sort of a girlfriend that he sees, and he finds out that she's pregnant. She has a baby. It turns out to be this really weird kind of mutant creation that causes him to go a little bit slowly insane, affects the woman in the relationship to the mother. But I wasn't really sure what to expect going into this. And what I would say is this, as an artistic experiment, Eraserhead is really interesting. I think it's a beautiful, an ugly, beautiful film. It's kind of a juxtaposition, a little weird, I know, but it's beautiful to look at. There are these very kind of stark black and white images. And honestly, this is the kind of movie where I feel like you could freeze frame just about any scene in it, and it's almost a piece of art in and of itself. However, taken as a whole, it's a very, I don't know if this is the right word, but a very borderline repulsive experience. It basically, my take on this is that it's a commentary on parenthood. Now, as a parent, I would say that my experience was nothing like this, right? I mean, it can be draining and kind of in a little bit maybe panic inducing at times when you have a newborn and you're not really sure what to do, like is the case with any parent, first time parent. But I think this probably says more honestly about Lynch and his experiences with parenthood than I would say the greater population. You could get into maybe some deeper exploration of the roles of fathers and mothers and all of that kind of stuff, and sort of some commentary that's woven into this. But I do feel like more often than not, this ventures into the realm of feeling like a kind of loosely constructed student film than a fully polished feature film. On the one hand, that makes it really interesting, right? Because it does some things that no feature film typically would do. There are some very strange dream sequences where you've got what are kind of fetuses dropping around a singer who's got sort of a mutated face. What that's meant to represent, I don't fully know, right? I'm sure someone who has more thoroughly analyzed the movie than me can comment on that in the comments and let me know what I'm missing there, and I could research it a little bit more. But there are times where it veers into territory super frequently, more often than not, to use that term again, to the point of kind of alienating the viewer almost a little too much. I think the narrative here is so loosely constructed, and it's minimalistic in terms of its dialogue, right? I mean, you've got a few lines here and there, but there are just sequences, long scenes of people just sitting and staring at one another, and you hear noises in the background. And this kind of mutant baby just shrieking and crying. And it's meant to be, I think, kind of a grating experience to give you that sense of being closed in and feeling boxed in and almost getting into a sense of panic like the character's experiencing. But again, I think there are times where it just goes a little bit too far overboard for the sake of art, right? And I'm using that term loosely because I think a lot of viewers would see this movie and maybe 20 minutes into it, just be like, I'm done with it. I just can't make any sense of this. It's just too surreal. It's too abstract. I can't really find any meaning here. And that's my thing with a movie in general, right? When I watch it, does the movie entertain me? Does it make me feel something? Is there some kind of subtext? Am I supposed to, or can I pinpoint what I learned after having watched the movie? Here, I feel like I've learned how David Lynch at that time, right, maybe felt about his experiences with parenthood. That would be my takeaway. What I felt while watching this, again, would be a sense of claustrophobia. So in a sense, it did accomplish its aim, but this is not the kind of movie that I would want to watch multiple times, right? I'm glad I have it as sort of as maybe kind of a point of reference for the sake of understanding early forms of filmmaking for Lynch as a director. It's definitely atypical, you know, when you kind of look at it, the pantheon of what are recognized today as important directors, um, in the sense that it's not a more kind of traditionally constructed film or narrative. But again, I don't know that I'm ever going to watch it again, right? And rewatchability is not something that should necessarily, you know, be a major factor, I guess. I mean, I think for some people it is when it comes to judging the worth of a film. For example, Schindler's List. That is an important movie. I love the directing in that movie. It is hard to watch. I don't necessarily want to watch it more than once, but I can appreciate the filmmaking scope and quality of that as sort of a standalone watching experience. The same can be said here, but I wouldn't say that it's nearly as important as something like Schindler's List, right? Just to kind of make a comparison to a film that I wouldn't necessarily watch multiple times, but I have great respect for. Would I say this is a good movie? Probably not, but I think it's an interesting experiment, and that's where I would kind of leave it. I'm glad I watched it, right? Now, I am going to get into things like Blue Velvet and Lost Highway and some of his other films. I am going to check those out, so I'll be interested to see how he evolves over time as I'm sort of going through the decades and sort of his projects, which I don't think he has that many movies that he's directed, so it shouldn't take too long to get through that. But anyway, those are my thoughts on Eraserhead. If you've seen it, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.